number is BMF 2007 and 017, and today I would like to share about our presentation about assignment law. And our first question is about why should corporate governance practices are needed and their importance to Islamic financial institution. For our answer for this question is importance of some corporate governance to Islamic financial is because it's guarantee the Islamic financial institution follow Sharia rule in their entire operation and that they fulfill their responsibility in reporting earning in the best interest of shareholders. The major goal of this essay is to analyze the many aspects of corporate governance and to provide a framework that considers corporate governance from a Sharia viewpoint. The descriptive and analytical methodology demonstrate that the Islamic economic system corporate governance model learn towards being stakeholder-centric as Islam governance structure protect all stakeholders and shareholders' right and interest. For the growth of a strong and healthy Islamic finance industry, strong corporate and bank governance is required. Islamic corporate governance is not a new concept. The three key themes of accountability, openness, and trustworthiness are emphasized in the Islamic approach of corporate governance. First principle, every company should headed by an effective board to lead and control the company. The board should meet regularly and as warranted by particular circumstances, as deemed appropriate by the board members. Company are encouraged to amend their article of association to provide for telephonic and video conference meeting. The number of board meetings held in the year as well as the attendance of every board member at those meetings are specialized committees established by the board. Board should be disclosed in the company annual report. Okay, the second one is effective board composition. With a strong independent elements for the evidence for the principle is no individual or small group of individuals should be allowed to dominate the board decision making. There should be a strong and independent elements on the board, with independent directors making up at least 1/3 of the board. An independent director is one who has no relationship with the company, its related company or its officer that could interfere or be reasonably perceived to interfere with the exercise of the director's independent business judgment with a view to the best interest of the company. Example of such relationship which would deem a director not to be independent include: first one is a director being employed by the company or any of its related company for the current or any of the past 3 financial year. Thirdly is clear division of responsibility at the helm of an institution. The chairman should, first one is scheduled meeting that enable the board to perform its duty responsibly while not interfering with the flow of the company operation. For the second one is prepare meeting agenda in consultation with the CEO. And the last one for Principle 3 is exercise control over quality, quantity and timeliness of the flow of information between management and the board. And the last for my part is formal and transparent process for the appointment of directors to the board. For example, the NC should be charged with the responsibility of renomination having regard to the directors' contribution and performance. For example, attendance, preparedness, participation and candor, including if applicable as an independent director. As a principle of good corporate governance, all directors should be required to submit themselves for renomination and re-election at regular interval at least every 3 years.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Shakir bin Hamzah. My ID number is BMF 2007016. In this presentation, I will answer the question about 14 principle and I will explain the answer from principle 5 until principle 14. Principle 5. Formal assessment of the effectiveness of the board as a whole and the contribution by each director to the effectiveness of the board. The nominating committee should determine how the board performance shall be assessed and provided objective performance standard. Such performance criteria, which allow for comparison with industry peers, should be approved by the board and should highlight how the board has improved long-term shareholder value. This performance standard should not be changed from year to year, and if any of them must be changed due to some unexpected circumstance, the board should be held responsible for justifying its decision. Next is principle number 6. In order to fulfill their responsibilities, board members should be provided with complete, adequate and timely information prior to board meetings and on an ongoing basis. Management has an obligation to supply the board with complete, adequate information in a timely manner. Reliance purely on what is volunteered by management is unlikely to be enough in all circumstances, and further inquiry may be required in the particular director to fulfill his or her duties properly. Hence, the board should have separate and independent access to the company's senior management. Next is principle 7. There should be a formal and transparent procedure for fixing the remuneration package or individual directors. No director should be involved in deciding his own remuneration. The board should set up a remuneration committee, or we call it as RC, comprising a majority of non-executive directors who are independent of management and free from any business or other relationship which may materially interfere with the exercise of their independent judgment. This is to minimize the risk of any potential conflict of interest. Principle 8. The level of remuneration should be appropriate to attract, retain and motivate the director need to run the company successfully, but companies should avoid paying more for this purpose. A proportion of the remuneration, especially that of executive director, should be linked to performance. In setting remuneration package, the company should be aware of pay and employment conditions within the industry and in comparable companies. The remuneration package should take into account the company's relative performance and the performance of individual director. The performance-related element of remuneration should form a significant proportion of the total remuneration package of executive director and should be designed to align their interests with those of shareholders and link reward to corporate and individual performance. there should be appropriate and meaningful measures for the purpose of assessing executive directors' performance. Next, Principle 9. Each company should provide clear disclosure of its remuneration policy, level and mix of remuneration, and the procedure for setting remuneration in the company's annual report. The board should report to the shareholder each year on the remuneration of director and at least the top 5 key executives who are not also directors of the company. This annual remuneration report should form part of or be annexed to the company's annual report of its director. It should be the main vehicle through which the company reports to shareholder on remuneration matter. The member of the RC should be listed in the report. Principle number 10. The board is accountable to the shareholder while the management is accountable to the board. The board should provide the shareholder with a balanced and understandable assessment of the company's performance, position and prospect on a quarterly basis. This responsibility extends to interim and other price-sensitive public report and report to regulators if required. The management should provide all members of the board with a balanced and understandable management account of the company's performance, position and prospect on the monthly basis. Next is Principle 11. The board should establish an audit committee, or we call it AC, with written term of reference which clearly set out its authority and duties. The AC should comprise at least 3 directors or non-executive, the majority of whom, including the chairman, should be independent. The board should ensure that the members of the AC are appropriately qualified to discharge their responsibilities. At least 2 members should have accounting or related financial management expertise or experience, as the board interprets such qualification in its business judgment. The AC should have explicit authority to investigate any matter within its term of reference, full access to the cooperation by management, and full discretion to invite any director or executive officer to attend its meeting, and reasonable resource to enable it to discharge its function properly. Next is Principle 12. The board should ensure that the management maintain a sound system of internal control to safeguard the shareholder investment and the company asset. The AC should ensure that a review of the effectiveness of the company material, internal control, including financial, operational and compliance control, and risk management is conducted at least annually. Such review can be carried out by the internal or external auditor. The board should comment on the adequacy of the internal control in the company's annual report. Next, Principle 13. The company should establish an internal audit function that is independent of the activities it audits. The internal auditor primary line of reporting should be to the chairman of the AC, although the internal auditor will also report administratively to the CEO. The internal auditor should meet or exceed the standards set by nationally or internationally recognized professional body, including the standard for the professional practice of international auditing set by the Institution of Internal Auditor. The AC should ensure that the internal audit function is adequately resourced and has appropriate standing within the company. For the avoidance of doubt, the internal audit function can either be the in-house, outsourced to a reputable accounting auditing firm, or performed by a major shareholder, holding company, parent company, or controlling enterprise with an internal auditor. The AC should, at least annually, ensure the adequacy of the internal audit function.
I will be presenting about the background and functions of the Islamic Financial Services Board, IFSB, in Islamic Financial Services industry. The background of Islamic Financial Services Board. The Islamic Financial Service Board, IFSB, headquartered in Kuala Lumpur, was established on November 3, 2002 and began operations on March 10, 2003. It is an international standard-setting group full of regulatory and supervisory agencies with a role in the soundness and stability of the Islamic financial services industry, which is generally defined to cover banking, capital markets, and insurance. In order to achieve this goal, the IFSB encourages the growth of a wise and transparent Islamic financial services industry by establishing new or adapting current international standards and are Sharia compliant, and recommending their adoption. The International Financial Service Board's work supports that of the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, the International Organization of Securities Commission, and the International Association of Insurance Services Supervisor in this regard. The IFSB's 187 members include 81 regulatory and supervisory bodies, 10 international intergovernmental organizations, and 96 markets participants, financial institutions, professional companies, industry associations, and stock exchanges, operating in 57 jurisdictions as of June 2021. Malaysia, the IFSB's home country, has enacted the Islamic Financial Services Board Act 2002, which grants the IFSBs the same privilege and immunity as other international organizations and diplomatic missions. The objective and function of Islamic Financial Service Board: first, to encourage the growth of a responsible and transparent Islamic financial services business by establishing new or adapting current international standards that are Sharia compliant and encouraging their adoption. Second, to provide guidance on effective supervision and regulation of institutions offering Islamic financial products, as well as to develop criteria for identifying, measuring, managing, and disclosing risks for the Islamic financial services industry while taking into account international standards for valuation, income, and expenses calculation and disclosure. Third, to communicate with and collaborate with relevant organizations that are currently establishing criteria for the stability and soundness of international monetary and financial systems, as well as those of members' countries. Fourth, to enhance and coordinate initiatives to develop instruments and procedures for efficient operation and risk management. 5. To encourage cooperation amongst member countries in developing the Islamic financial services industry. 6. To facilitate training and personnel development in areas connected to the efficient regulation of the Islamic financial services industry and related markets more accessible. 7. To undertake research into and publish studies and surveys on the Islamic financial services industry. 8. To establish a database of Islamic banks, financial institution and industry experts. 9. Any other objective which the General Assembly of the IFSB may agree from time to time.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Helmi bin Habibullah. I'm from DPFIC. Now I will explain about the objective and adoption of accounting and auditing organization for Islamic financial institution. Short form is AAIOFI for Islamic bank and takaful operator. For AOFI, within the Islamic Sharia principle and rules has the following objective. First is to advance accounting, governance, auditing and ethical thought in relation to activities of Islamic financial institution, while taking into account worldwide standard and practices that are compliant with Islamic Sharia regulation. Second is accounting, auditing, governance and ethical ideas relevant to the activities of Islamic financial institution, and their implementation should be extensively disseminated. For example, training seminar, periodic newsletter and report creation and research and other method. Third is through the development and distribution of accounting standard and interpretation to Islamic financial institution. Standardize the accounting policies and procedure used by those organizations. After that, improve the quality and consistency of auditing and governance process linked to Islamic financial institution by developing and issuing auditing governance standard as well as providing interpretation to the institution. Then, by preparing and issuing code of ethics to Islamic financial institution, promote excellent ethical behavior related to this organization. For number 4 is to achieve similarity and conformity. It is because to extend possible in concept and application among the Sharia Supervisory Board of Islamic financial institution, in order to avoid contradiction and inconsistency between the fatwas and application by this institution, with a view to activating the role of the Sharia Supervisory Board and Islamic financial institution and central bank through the preparation, insurance and interpretation of Sharia standard and Sharia rules for investment, fiduciary and other financial instruments. For number 5, in order to execute the requirement as well as statement by AOFI, contract the relevant regulatory organisation, Islamic financial institution and other financial institutions that offer Islamic financial service and accountant. For number 6 is to provide educational training programs such as professional development program in accounting, auditing, ethics, governance, Sharia and other related areas, in order to enhance the knowledge of Islamic banking and finance and to encourage better professionalism. AOFI will conduct training, examination and certification on in-house collaboration with other organizations. For number 7 is further initiative such as certification of compliance with AOFI standard will be carried out in order to raise awareness and acceptance of AOFI accounting, auditing, ethics, governance and Sharia standard. AOFI achieves this goal in line with Islamic Sharia, with its comprehensive framework for all parts of life, and in accordance with the context in which Islamic financial institutions have grown. This activity aims to increase the confidence of users of Islamic financial institution financial statement in the information generated about them, as well as to encourage them to invest or deposit their fund into Islamic financial institution and use their service. Many countries and jurisdictions around the world have adopted AOFI Sharia standard as mandatory regulatory requirement. Country that has started this is Bahrain, Jordan and Mauritius, Nigeria, Qatar, Oman, Pakistan, Sudan, Syria and the United Arab Emirates. AOFI Sharia standard are followed by a number of Sharia Islamic finance, Sharia consultancy, educational training institution, as well as non-banking financial companies. Legal base for a national standard have been formed in countries such as Kazakhstan based on AOFI Sharia norm and have been recommended as guideline as jurisdictions such as Kuwait. OFI Syariah standard are followed by many Syariah consultancy, auditing firm, takaful or insurance companies, non-banking finance companies, capital market institution, educational training institution, Syariah scholar professional around the world, and in addition to regulatory institution.